Good Wednesday afternoon. Jerry Miller, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. Good to be with you. Thank you kindly for joining us. Live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. Good show lined up for you. A lot of news that we're going to cover. We're heading towards what's looking like a reopening next week. We have businesses on Charlottesville now gone on the record with media in the community saying they're going to reopen. A gym in particular, and we have a number of restaurants and smaller boutique gyms set to make announcements as well. We'll cover those today on the I Love CVille Show. We'll talk about the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau going on the record with local media, talking about hotel and occupancy rates at hotels and how they are at very low rates right now. And it is cause for concern because the hotel rates not only create lodging tax for Charlottesville and Albemarle County, but when folks come to hotels and stay in Charlottesville and Albemarle and in Central Virginia, they spend money at restaurants and they go to sporting events and do outdoor activities like breweries and wineries and window shop. So we'll track the occupancy rates at hotels in the area per the CACVB today on the I Love CVille Show. We'll also ask you this question: what do you want a reopening to look like next week? Whether you want to admit it or not, whether you want to accept it or not, maybe you have. Maybe you're extremely concerned, and everyone is. A reopening is going to happen. What do you want it to look like? What do you want to see from your local businesses? How are you going to respond to the first restaurants that reopen? How are you going to respond to these gyms, these boutique gyms that are reopening in Charlottesville? Will you respond in support? Will you respond in anger? Will you respond by waiting and seeing and being standoffish for a little bit because of safety concerns? That's the question I want to ask on the program. The I Love CVille Show on the I Love CVille Network. Ray Caddell is going to join us in about 15 minutes on the program. We'll talk about some of these topics with Ray. He's a realtor in the community. He's also very prominent in the weddings and events space with his band and the booking of many musicians. Not just Big Ray and the Cool Cats, but musicians that he knows on his roster that he's placing across weddings and events across the country. So he's felt the burn as a musician, as an entrepreneur, as a manager of bookings and events, and certainly in the real estate space. We'll talk about that with Big Ray here on the I Love CVille Show. We'll thank Interstate Pest and Service Companies and Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine for being a part of this show. These two brands and businesses, family-owned, and committed to doing really good things in Charlottesville and Central Virginia, and certainly in this COVID-19 landscape where they're putting health and safety and their clients and customers at the forefront of their mind. First story, I think, is a headline we have to follow closely. This from NBC 29, thumbs up when it's on. Charlottesville and Albemarle hotels, thank you, Judah. The last week of March to the first week of April. 23% occupied, ladies and gentlemen. Worth repeating, hotels in Charlottesville and in Albemarle County, according to the CACVB that tracks this, an occupancy rate of 23%. I'm here to tell you, I don't have a crystal ball, but that number is going to get worse. That's the last week of March and first week of April. It got worse in April. 23%. The number last year at the same time in the same week, 75% occupied. So from 75% to 23% year over year. Cause for concern. Cause for concern. Remember, when you stay in a hotel and you're from outside the area, you're visiting perhaps a daughter or a son or a grandson or granddaughter or family at the University of Virginia. Or maybe you're coming here for a sporting event or for a brewery winery weekend or for a bachelorette or bachelor party or for some kind of music event. Maybe you just want to get the heck out of Washington, D.C. because can you imagine being in Northern Virginia right now on top of all these people relying on transportation? You say, I need a break from this cluster and I want to go down to Charlottesville and Central Virginia, bring my money, spend my money, and enjoy some time in hotels and restaurants and retail. So follow the number. It's an important metric to the health of the economy. An important metric to the healthy economy is an occupancy rate that is much higher than 23%. And I'm here to warn everybody it's going to get worse. April's much worse than that last week of March. Here's an interesting story, and it's one I'm going to follow closely. There's a boutique gym, headline number 2, Judah, that has now announced its reopening. May 15th, Iron Will Gym in the Pantop Center. It's a boutique gym, a really small one. It caters to 15 people or less. On the record, we're opening May 15th. I'm curious of how you're going to respond to businesses opening. Once one opens, the rest will follow. I'm curious, and we have certainly a very group of influential restaurateurs that watch this program and comment often on this network and in comment sections saying, look, we're going to open as a group. So a lot of the locally owned restaurants have already said we're going to open as a group all together at once with clear-cut protocols for the community to follow. For me, what I'd like to see from, say, a restaurant that opens is I'd like to see in them insisting that we all wear masks in the dining room, certainly until the food is plated and on the table. I would like to see masks provided to guests if guests don't have one as they walk in. I would like to see waiters and waitresses in front of the house staff. And in fact, I'd like to see all staff wearing masks. I'd like to see some person allocated at a restaurant to potentially going around to the tables and cleaning them. I think oftentimes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, German Shepherds and Chow Chows, I think oftentimes perception is reality. And it's paramount that we are clean and healthy. It's paramount that we are checking every surface and social distancing and being mindful of the people around us. But at the same time, perception is reality. I want to see the effort put into play. How are you going to respond to a gymnasium like Iron Will Gym on Pantop's opening? Now on record. The rest will follow. Let's follow that closely. I expect a couple of restaurants to make announcements this week. And these restaurants are going to say, look, we think we can open for dining room service. And it might be in very limited capacity, but I see that happening. In fact, I've been told that's going to happen. I'll wait till they make that announcement on the program. What would you like to see from the businesses you support? I'm curious. And I think it's important information because I think it's also going to benefit the businesses that are crowdsourcing or following content like this on social media, where they see that the public and their fans and their supporters want this, they can respond their model and say, look, we can offer. I think it's important to pass the feedback along. Another headline that I'm following really closely is shopping centers like Barracks Road Shopping Center and Stonefield. I've touched on this closely. I've been in close contact with the local business owners in Stonefield, in Barracks Road Shopping Center, and some of the other shopping centers in Charlottesville. They've reached out to us. They're extremely nervous. That's probably an understatement. Terrified, most likely. Take a Federal Realty. The owner of Barracks Road Shopping Center is a publicly traded company called Federal Realty that has stockholders to answer to first. Before Federal Realty answers to its tenants, it answers to its stockholders first. What is a Federal Realty going to do for a business like the Happy Cook? What is a Federal Realty going to do for Tiffany Smith's in the Virginia shop? What is a Federal Realty going to do for hotcakes? Okay, hotcakes, small place. You're not going to be able to get a lot of people there. Certainly not going to have enough customer traffic to afford Class A office space in Barracks Road Shopping Center, $50, $60 a square foot easy. I mean, Bricks Pizza, it's a separate island path. That's $80 a square here. Okay, what about Justin Goodman and Zoom? Okay, indoor cycling, a Charlottesville boy. Okay. What's going to happen to these tenants? If Federal Realty is watching, and guys, someone tag an owner in Barracks Road Shopping Center on the feed right now. One of the local owners, tag them on the feed on any of the 12 Facebook pages you're watching this program. Tag them, okay? I'm going to say this for the local owners. The local owners that are in Barracks Road Shopping Center or the local owners are in Stonefield. You have a power in numbers. And right now, you need to go to your point of contact and leasing with Federal Realty and Barracks Road Shopping Center as a combined unit. And you need to say, we need this, 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 and that. And Federal Realty, publicly traded company, you need to give it to the association or to that little group of locally owned tenants. Because Federal Realty, if you don't, your Charlottesville property just got a heck of a lot less valuable. Because it's very close to turning into nothing but corporately owned chain big brands, and that business model does not cater, boys and girls, to the true Charlottesville fabric and identity. So form the group, Federal Realty, locally owned tenants. Form the group, reach out to your contact at Federal Realty and say, we're not going to pay rent for this period of time. All of us as a locally owned business group in this shopping center. And this is what we want from you. Boom, boom, boom. And Federal Realty better give it to them. If not, that group of locally owned businesses has got to play the poker game of saying, I'm going to piece out of this shopping center and take it down from a locally owned standpoint. That's the game that has to be played right now. Because none of the locally owned shopping centers and Barracks Road Shopping Center right now, none of the locally owned businesses and Barracks Road Shopping Center right now can afford the rates that Federal Realty that is still asking. And Federal Realty is beholden to its stockholders first. That's why they're not throwing them a bone. Get with it, Federal Realty. Okay, next headline's a good one. This one is from local banking. How many businesses, and I'm going to be straight up, we haven't gotten any of the business PPP money at this company. None, zilch, zero, nada. A lot of people watching this program are entrepreneurs and business owners that either have gotten some or have not gotten some. And one of the things, as the owner of an advertising agency that oftentimes is dealing with other locally owned business owners and hearing what they have to say, one of the common denominators I have heard from other C-suite executives, CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, the people running the businesses, and the business owners, the small business owners, is the locally owned banks are processing the loans a heck of a lot faster. And then I see this report, because I love following the banks, especially the local ones closely, and I see this report, and it's from the Roanoke Times. And let's get that report on screen for me, please, Judah. Atlantic Union Bank, thank you, and Virginia Partners have loaned a combined $1.75 billion with a B dollars through the PPP program to small businesses. These are Fredericksburg, Virginia founded banks. Atlantic Union Bank and Virginia Partners have loaned $1.75 billion. I want to discuss what have we learned from banking in this COVID-19 climate shortly. Before we do, a couple of tidbits really struck me from this story. Again, Atlantic Union Bank was started in Caroline County. Okay, Virginia Partners, also a Fredericksburg bank. That's where it was started. These two banks combine over $1.75 billion in confirmed loans. Billion with the B, they confirmed last week. Atlantic Union Bank, according to the story in the Roanoke Times, has become the largest bank in Virginia. This is what I think we've learned, and I have a lot of conversations with the C-suite teams at businesses and also with the business owners themselves. The locally owned banks have processed the PPP loans and have gotten the money to the decision makers and to the bank accounts of the small companies a heck of a lot faster than the big banks. The big banks got funneled and got disrupted. Their supply chain got crushed because they had so many clients nationwide. The BB&Ts that merged with the BB&Ts that's now Truist. Okay, merged with SunTrust, the Bank of Americas. These big banks had so much demand for these PPP loans that they weren't in place from an infrastructure standpoint to handle the demand, and as a result, The money didn't get out as fast from the big banks. The little banks, and you can ask your fellow entrepreneurs, they had not as many clients and were prepared because they often had the small business relationships already in place as a locally owned community bank. They were prepared for the local demand off the street because they had a better pulse of what the local street was saying to them, and it was like, it's hitting the fan and we need the money now. So if we learn something from this as business owners and entrepreneurs, in this particular circumstance, because of accessibility, because of a better pulse of the street in the local markets, and because of the relationship already in place with the local C-suite and the local owners, the local banks proved to be hugely more of an advantageous partner than the big banks. Ask around. And this Roanoke Times report helps verify that logic. Now, I want a couple of macro stories before we welcome Ray Caddell to the show. Ray Caddell will go to you in about 2 minutes here. He's a realtor. He's a entrepreneur. He's in a band. He's just a Renaissance man. And what he does as a realtor and as someone who manages bookings for other musicians in the wedding space and someone who does a band himself in Big Ray and the Cool Cats, his profession, in a lot of ways, a true indication of how the economy is going to restart. Are the bookings going to happen back in? Are the houses going back on the markets again? Are we seeing the days of market shorten? Are we seeing the homes going on contract? Is the guitar player in Richmond, the percussionist in Fredericksburg, are they getting gigs in D.C. and in Richmond this weekend? I mean, it's a really good feel of what's happening with the economy. Before we get to Ray, let's get a story from Uber. I love the macro stories. This is a two-part story. It's going to take 60 seconds, so bear with me. Uber today lays off 14% of its workforce. Thank you, Judah. It's on screen now. 14% of its workforce Uber laid off today. That's 3,700 people Uber laid off today. And it makes sense. Wouldn't you be concerned about getting into a car that's a stranger's and you don't know who was in that car in the back seat 2 minutes before you got in it yourself, and you're unsure of this stranger's car who you've never been in his or her vehicle before, if they've actually wiped the seat when the people that were on it before just left? Was it okay? You see why the business model is a little concerned. Take it a step further. How about Uber Share? Would you really get in a back seat with another stranger, knee to knee, elbow to elbow, with them in the middle seat, somebody else on the left seat behind the driver, and you in the right seat behind the shotgun seat? All right, Uber guy, pick me up at I Love CVille next to the Market Street Market grocery store. I'd like to go to the Virginian restaurant on the corner so I can get a $4 cold beer for happy hour. Sure, I'll sit next to Louise in the middle. Louise is going to Public for happy hour. And Rick, right there, yeah, he's going to the College Inn. Who in the heck is going to do that? So Uber lays off 14% of its workforce, but here's the second part of the story. At the same time, Uber is laying off this huge portion of its workforce, 14% and 3,700 employees. It's also doing a deal because its balance sheet has money and reserves on it. It's also doing a deal with Lime scooters. Do you guys remember? Thank you. You remember Lime scooters, those little scooters that came into Charlottesville? And you could use these things to unlock them for $1. And you could ride these damn things all over town. And you could also disembark the Lime scooters and put them on the street when you were done riding them. It raised a ruckus in Charlottesville. People were losing their mind about these scooters. Some loved them and some vehemently hated them. Well, Lime, guys, is getting crushed. Lime at one time had a valuation of over $1 billion with a B dollars. It was a unicorn. A valuation over $1 billion Lime in about a 13-month period of time it got to that valuation. Now its valuation, ladies and gentlemen, is $510 million, and that's based on an investment from Uber. Yes, the same company that's laying off 14% of its workforce. Yes, the same company that pink slipped 3,700 people. That same company is leading a $170 million investment into Lime, into a lower valuation that it already had money into the company. It already was an investor in this company. It's basically saying, I can get this distressed asset for pennies on the dollar because its balance sheet is in shambles, and I don't care that I'm canning 3,700 people I'm going to take this $170 million, and instead of saving the 3,700 people, 14% of the workforce, I'm going to let them go, and instead I'm going to use this $170 million and buy this distressed asset over here in a scooter company. Because if Uber transportation, if scooter transportation comes back to the market, Uber is betting that Lime's going to be first to market. And it's probably a good bet, because I would much more likely get on a Lime scooter and hold two handles that I can Clorox wipe, or wear latex gloves on and ride than get into a back of a car and Uber. But it just shows you the animalistic nature of a capitalistic market. You lay off 3,700 people, Uber, 14% of your workforce, yet you still take money that could have saved these people and you invest it into another company because it's such a distressed asset, it's such a phenomenal deal, and you think that's where the market is going. It's animalistic, it's capitalistic, and it's Darwinism at its finest. It's the way it works, whether we like it or not. I'm going to go to Skype and welcome Ray Caddell to the show, Judah. In fact, I'm calling him now. I want to talk about some of these topics with Ray. I also want to get to these comments that are coming in. We're live on 12 Facebook pages on what you guys think restaurants should do. And Ray, before we get you on here, let's get that camera turned on so we can see your handsome mug. I also want to find out what you want from restaurants and your gyms when they open May 15th. We have one on record, and this guy's got some cojones to talk to the media and say, May 15th, we're opening. Okay, I want to see what you want from your restaurants and your gyms. Ray, are we good with Ray, Judah? We're live here? All right, Ray, you're live for Charlottesville and Central Virginia. Thank you for coming on the show.
Good afternoon. I'm always glad to be here. And before I forget, just like at the end of every one of my shows, I always try to thank my production people, because I will tell you, without Judah, you would not see my face today, because he straightened some stuff out.
I think you're 100% right, and we're getting the thumbs up from here on everything. Judah, we sounding good? We are? Okay. So Ray, give us a thumbs up here, man. Where you at? Where you at in life?
Where am I at in life? Well, first of all, I'm healthy. My family's healthy. My 86-year-old mother-in-law who lives with me is healthy. My 89-year-old mother is healthy in Florida, a little annoyed the golf course is closed. So that's where it all starts for me. I have a kind of a split business personality. I do two things for a living. I've done them for a very long time. This is my 35th year in the real estate business. It's my 50th year in the entertainment business. So I've seen a lot, man. I've seen 9/11. I've seen slowdowns. I've seen all kinds of things. I've not seen anything like this because I wasn't around for the epidemic in the teens. But it's brought some interesting things to light. You know, I talk to people every day, and I go, oh, man, I'm so sorry about the real estate business. So sorry. Must be dead. I ran the numbers just before we came on. We call them pendings in my business, under contracts. When you get in a situation like this, I believe that's the number that's most important. Closed, that much, because that's work that we probably did in December or January.
In the rears.
Even earlier than that, if it was new construction. Sure. What's going on in the market? Well, we need inventory, of course, but I'm not sure that's a really good indicator of the health of the market. I was a little surprised. I started it Friday, and I just ran it through today. That's all. 67 houses under contract. 67 in Albemarle, Charlottesville, Greene, and Fluvanna. I just pulled those four things since Friday. That's fabulous news. 23 of those houses were vacant, which is not normally important, but really important these days because they're a lot easier to deal with. And even more interestingly, only 3 of those were new construction, which sometimes is a really big part of our market and can skew the numbers, but not so much in this little snapshot. 67 homes under contract since Friday.
67 homes under contract since Friday.
Yes.
What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, it's a whole lot more than I thought there were
going to
be. So I'm excited about it, and I'm going to change how I look at things a little bit without having hard data in front of me. They're all over the price ranges from 103,000 to $1,001,000. The days on the markets, the average days on market, the time from when it was listed to when it went under contract, 66 days, not that unusual. I hesitate to call it healthy or making a rebound, but I will tell you this, it's not dead. People are out there buying houses. People are out there selling houses. People still have to move. They're still having babies. They're still getting moved into town in a job. They're still getting moved out of town in a job. All the regular things. And again, only 23 of those houses were vacant. So 44 families of one size or another living in their house put it on.
Let me throw this to you here. Ray Caddell, thank you for joining us. Barbara Lundgren giving you props. Thank you for all you do, Big Ray. We love your daily positive notes on social media. Dr. Lindsay Neal watching the program. She's given props to Troy Dodd at Atlantic Union Bank. Atlantic Union Bank is getting a lot of props for what they've been doing in this community. All right, Ray, I'm going to throw this to you. Real estate in Charlottesville. April and Q2. We just got Q1 numbers. I think we're all in agreement. We'll disregard the Q1 numbers. It's a completely different environment. Okay. So Q2, we don't have those numbers yet. I'm curious to see this question for you. I know we both agree that Q2 is going to be a little iffy. Do we see a spring in the fall market in Q3? Are we seeing a spring market not till next year, 2021, actual start of Q2? When's the spring market coming?
I think
we still got you?
I didn't hear the very end of that. You broke up a little, but this is what I think. And I think that people are not talking about what's driving this slowdown. Sure, people are a little frightened even and concerned and not sure what to do. Sure, buyers are a little concerned. Geez, am I even going to have a job? But there are things that are under contract now that the banks, the mortgage companies, and I can't blame them for this, they're tightening things up a little bit. If you don't have a regular everyday job and get paid every Friday or every 2 Fridays, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're self-employed, if you're a 1099 guy, you are going to have to step up to the plate either with a bigger down payment, which is always difficult, or you're going to really have to show the bank that you can make these payments. And I think we're just, until we find out how the banks and the mortgage companies are going to look at some of this, it's pretty tough to think about and somehow prognosticate where this thing's going. Listen, there's no question that the health of America, the physical health of America, is driving everything right now. But I was just so encouraged to see 67 homes go under contract over the weekend. I mean, it's exciting to me. So there is business out there. It's still out there. You know what, though, folks? If you're putting your house on the market or it's on the market now, it better be clean. It better have the right price on it, and you better have the right agent, because it's not so you can't just stick a sign in the yard anymore.
Amen.
The world's not like that.
Here's a good question for you, Ray Caddell, our guest. Mary Eppert, hello, welcome to the program. Mary Eppert, one of Greene County High School's finest. Love some Mary Eppert on this program. Mariah, hello, welcome to the show. Christopher Eagle, real estate agent, welcome to the program. G. Milo is giving you some props as a cool cat. He's watching the show as we speak. Which business category rebounds faster, music or real estate?
Well, I think real estate, and here's why. Let's just take Big Ray and the Cool Cats as a microcosm of this. First of all, 80% of our work's weddings. The 20% that isn't weddings, the charity galas, the corporate stuff, things like that, they're all gone for 2020. They've already all moved to next year. That just doesn't exist anymore, that part of our business. Weddings are a little more complicated, but here's my job at a wedding. My job is, so let's say, and there's a big Charlottesville wedding and event planner Zoom meeting today, and there's a panel. I happen to be on the panel, but we have an attorney on there too. And one of the things that's interesting is, so you have this big space, and let's say you figure out how to socially distance people. We had a caterer on figuring out how many people can you get at an 8-foot round and still meet the social distance requirements and things like that. Let's say you get all of that figured out, and it takes a bigger space to do that. Well, my entire job throughout the evening is to get all those spaced out people to come to a much smaller space right in front of me and dance and sweat and breathe heavily. So I don't know what's going to happen with all that. I'm looking at changing some repertoire to provide a still exciting but maybe not danceable thing. It would surprise me if the governor said there's no dancing until September 30th or whatever.
Do you pivot your model? Do you pivot your model to a smaller band to accommodate limitation numbers? Like, let's say phase 2 for weddings. Let's say phase 2 is no more than 50 people, and no more than 50 people includes all the people there. Do you have to pivot to a smaller band?
Well, here's the deal. Nobody's really clear on this. Is that 50 guests or is that 50 bodies in the building? And I was talking with the caterer yesterday. We had a little Zoom rehearsal kind of for tomorrow, and we're not always quite sure the answer to that yet. But if you're having a wedding and there's 2 cooks and a dishwasher and 8 servers, that's 11, and the planner, that's 12. And a couple people at the venue, that's 14, and the florist, that's 15. Let's leave my 12-piece band out of it. Let's say you have a 6-piece band. Now you're at 21. So how many people can come? So yeah, it's an interesting time. We're going to get through it. We're going to come out on the other end. Are we going to look the same on the other side as we did a couple months ago? Maybe not.
Dr. Lindsay Neal's watching. She says it's 50 total bodies.
50 total bodies. Yeah. So, wow. We'll talk about this tomorrow on this or later today rather on this wedding event panel we have. But there's a venue owner on the panel, and there's an attorney, and there's me, and there's Adam and Donovan Groves, who was just on your show. I mean, there's some people with some experience on this, and a lot of us have a lot of skin in the game. I know that's your favorite expression, but it's really, really, really complicated. And to make it more complicated for me personally, I don't just play in Virginia. I have you could have different restrictions depending on the state lines you cross. Well, how about I have a job coming up in Georgia? They just said, "Come on down." That's crazy. That's amazing. And then I have to think about the health and well-being of the people that work for me. You got good questions coming in. I'm going to relay some to you, okay? This is from Neil Williamson. Love Neil. And I believe, Neil, are you planning a wedding, Neil? I think you're being sarcastic here. It's hard to tell, Neil, via Facebook here. He says, who is held responsible for the number of people at a wedding? The client, the venue, the planner, the couple, the people who paid for it. How is it going to be civilly or criminally enforced? And by the way, I'm asking for a friend, and that's from Neil. Good questions. Yeah, I got to believe it's the venue. Me too. Now, I don't have any, it just seems to make sense to me. I agree. I think it's the venue as well. Lisa Watson, welcome to the program. Okay, you're a businessman. I almost forgot. Lisa's husband is on the panel tomorrow. Aaron Watson. Aaron Watson, good people. We're giving Aaron some love still on the show. I think he was on about 2 weeks ago on the program. All right, let's throw this to you here. 2 guys at a bar shooting the proverbial you-know-what about a community that they love strongly in Charlottesville and Central Virginia here. Which venue do you think, from a businessman standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, has an edge of making weddings and events happen quickly, having back again, and maybe doing them to the max capacity? Who has the edge here? Well, I mean that's a great question. And by the way, I lost the very first part of your question. It said poor connection, whatever that means. Give me the short version of the question again. Who has the edge in the venue space to make events happen again? I'm still there. Who has the edge? Can you hear me? Yeah, I got you. Who has the edge in the event space, Ray? Which venue? Which venue? Yeah, which venue can have events happen again fastest? Wow, you want me to pick one?
Shannon, who's a experienced and talented bartender and lives in Waynesboro, she says Mount Ida. Shannon, that's a really good vote because Mount Ida has a tremendous amount of outdoor opportunity for an event, and it also has an outdoor patio and bar. That's a good. I think outdoor ones have an edge here. What do you think, Caddell?
I think there's no question that outdoor is going to help. That's for sure. I will say if you take the tent thing out of the package, out of consideration, I think it's Castle Hill because I just think it's the biggest.
There you go.
But I will tell you this: we have some tremendously bright and intuitive and hardworking venue owners and managers in this town, and I can assure you, places like Pippin Hill, for instance, they're going to figure this out. They're going to be able to deliver the maximum that they can deliver that the governor allows.
Good comments coming in right here. Courtney Hillebrand says, I vote Keswick Vineyards. And is it Farcilia? I think those are two good guesses. Shannon says there's 2 event spaces at Mount Ida. That's why it has my vote. Kate Elwood says vineyard and brewery weddings, I think, could become more popular since they have space for guests to social distance outside and large outdoor space and indoor space. It's got to be tougher for small event spaces like Old Met or places even smaller. Kate, I agree 100%. And this is an interesting topic here, and Kate always brings up good ideas here. Camelin says King Family is going to figure it out. Christopher Eagle says King Family is going to figure it out. Courtney agrees with Castle Hill in your call. So I'm going to throw this to you. There's a boutique gym that's opening next week in Pantops, Iron Will Gym. They can open because the guidelines say 10 people or under. Well, their business model is maximum capacity is 15 people in the gym. So a gym that is max capacity is 15 can easily quickly pivot to 10 and still operate. Something like ACAC, it can't run and say I'm only going to allow 10 guests in and stay in business. People are going to get pissed off. It's funny. I'm going to talk about that after you're off, but that idea still very much comes into play for breweries, wineries, and weddings and venues. Just like Kate said, the bigger ones with the outdoor space are the ones that are going to shine here. What do you think?
Well, I think that won't play until we get into phase 3, because if it's under 50, it's under 50. I mean, no doubt about it. And hopefully phase 3, when we get there, we'll open it up for everybody. I'm not sure. I think people will feel better about having more outdoor space, and it may help the social distancing requirements. But I don't see that necessarily changes the number of people that you can have at your wedding. Particularly on phase 2.
Barbara Lundgren says, that's a good point, Ray. Barbara Lundgren says some outdoor spaces are crushed if it rains because they don't have the tents.
How about that?
Yeah. G. Milo says, I vote King Family. Rick Spagoni, what up, dude? Welcome to the program, Rick. Remember when we played ping pong that one day, Rick Spagoni? I love you, man. I'm going to this is a good question coming for you, Ray. What do you make about virtual weddings?
So, we had some conversation about that the other day. I'll tell you what's difficult about virtual weddings, besides the fact that it's not as much fun. We don't have a lot of our wedding venues are not necessarily in locations that have great Wi-Fi and great service. And I think that's going to be a problem that needs to somehow be resolved for some of those more rural situations. I mean, look, you're just sitting here right now. You're, 3 miles from me. I can see the Verizon building out my front door. I can see a tower. We clicked in and out.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes. I mean, it's just not an exact science.
It's not figured out. Courtney Hillebrand, who's in the event and catering space with the catering outfit. Courtney, I love what the catering outfit and Walter Slawski are doing right now. She says, guys, Jerry and Ray, if you look at Texas, they are giving less restrictions on open-air venues versus enclosed venues, but everything is based on capacity, not an actual 50-person number. So if you were 100-person capacity, your opening is based on percentage of capacity and square footage and not an actual hard cap. Fabulous information from Courtney right there, and she's on top of this. She's basically saying the cap is not going to be the 50 if you follow the trend that's happening in Texas. The cap
she needs to send that to the governor.
That is valuable information if that's actually
it really is.
Okay, because that hasn't been announced in Virginia yet.
No, and it's what she just said is very sensible and logical and makes sense. And there's so many on this little meeting we had yesterday, I was listening to the caterer. You think about things that you never thought about before. So are buffets gone? And I just drove by yesterday. I have a tenant that happens to work there for years. The Old Country Buffet. Are they closed forever? What's going to happen?
That's a good question. In fact, a guy who's watching the show now, and Hunter Smith, we admire him on the show. Hunter Smith shared an article from a restaurant, I believe, Hunter, it was in Cleveland, Ohio. And this particular restaurateur had like a farm-to-table restaurant, also had a farm where he was growing the stuff, and he's completely pivoted his model. And he was talking about in this article how desserts, I mean, can you imagine having a cake out in the center of a room, a $10,000 cake for people to breathe on before it gets cut?
There is a cake person on our panel today. And again, a perfect example of how we all have different problems and different concerns. She sells her cakes. She has a flat rate for a cake plus number of servings. Well, if her wedding just went from 200 people to 50, or 20, I mean, the damage to her bottom line is incalculable. The caterer told me they could get in a position where if they've signed a contract to do a wedding and they have to do all new things, like maybe all disposable flatware now and stuff, and they have to have more people because they have to be farther away from each other. He said he could see a situation where he could be in a position where he's actually losing money. And none of us are very interested in that. And of course, the force majeure clause, which the short version of that is, I have it in my contract to protect me if there's a hurricane and I can't get to Virginia Beach, and so I don't get sued. Well, that cuts both ways too. So now the clients, or some of them, are using that to try to use that to cancel. But there isn't one that said, there's no clause that says, hey, if it's going to be a lot more expensive for me to feed you or drink you, or I got to put a tent over you, that I get to charge you more. That's not in our contract. It's very, very, very complicated right now. I speak a lot. I was handled for 24 years by East Coast Entertainment. So even though I manage us now, I talk to them a lot. I talk to Andy Jasmine at Sam Hill a lot. This is a new world, man. It's funny. The younger people in my band said, this must be what 9/11 was, right? Right? I said, no. 9/11 was complicated because we were supposed to be in Las Vegas, which that shut some things down. I said, but 3 weeks after 9/11, not only did America go back to work, Americans somehow found it their patriotic duty to get out and spend money and have a wedding and have an event and go to a ball game.
Well, it's because our mindset was completely different. We were attacked by an outsider, and it galvanized us and brought us together. In this particular circumstance, we're attacked by a virus that's not really tangible, that we can't see and touch. So it's splintering us as opposed to galvanizing us.
Yeah, and it's sad that it is splintering us. You would think, of all the things that could possibly happen to America, if one thing could unite the conservatives and the liberals, both in Congress and both people like you and I, you would think this would be it. But you know what? It's making it worse.
Good stuff. This is another one here, and then I'll give you a final word. Anywhere you want to go, a final word. And then I'm going to close on some talk on restaurants, guys, with a lot of restaurateurs watching. So Courtney Hillenbrand has offered valuable information, and I would encourage that Zoom meeting that you had to reference this stuff that she's posting. She says, for catering, Jerry and Ray, here's another scary point to consider. Let's say you have a 50% deposit based on a 100-person event, and now they are a 50-person event, but they've already paid for the event. So now you have to put on an event and pay for the food with increased food costs now, labor, et cetera, zero final payment coming in. She's basically saying you're screwed, potentially.
Yep.
Cindy says this. Cindy Schoenberg, Keswick Vineyards, love her family. A short-term solution, Jerry and Ray, for 2020 weddings might be to rethink the traditional ceremony cocktail reception wedding, We might need to do without the reception part and do a longer cocktail hour with heavier appetizers until we are allowed to get closer to dancing, to allow dancing. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I'm horrified by that, but I think she's, of course, something like that's going to happen. I have an event that shortly that's going to have 18 people.
18 people?
18. And there will not be a reception. There will be a ceremony, and there will be cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. And I will provide some music for it. But yeah, people are rethinking things because they have to, we have to, everybody has to. And the whole, I got a call yesterday about somebody wants to know what their options are to cancel a date for next June, not 2020, 2021.
Oh, come on. And what did you say for that? What did you say to him?
People are frightened, Jerry. I said, I have a very simple cancellation philosophy. It only has 4 parts to it. And I said, yeah, you can do that and you lose your deposit.
Yeah.
I said, I can't help you with that otherwise. I said, if the governor says I'm not playing, I'm not playing. It's pretty easy, but you can't. That's what deposits are for.
Well, yeah, it's
just say, I changed my mind.
Right, it's the opportunity cost of you booking that date and keeping somebody else from booking it. I mean, that's only fair. All right, so anywhere you want to go, you have a lot of people. Anywhere you want to go, 12 Facebook pages you're live for, Charlottesville and such, Virginia. Ray, the show is yours.
Well, let me tell you where I want to go, and I sure hope somebody at the University of Virginia is watching the show. We're a college town. We're a small college town. I'm sure you know this better than me, but the amount of dollars and the amount of people employed by the University of Virginia dwarfs anything else we have to do. I just think they're being too quiet about this.
Amen.
And let me give you a perfect example, and I'm sure I'll get some nasty phone call from somebody about this. I can't believe that the University of Virginia in September is going to put 70,000 people in Scott Stadium for a football game. I just can't believe that's going to happen. I mean, you look at Major League Sports, they've already made these decisions. We're not playing baseball right now. I got to believe they know that. Well, if they know that, and I'll give you a perfect, I was speaking to a hotelier the other day who said, somebody wanted to move their wedding into October, and they called for a block of rooms, and of course she didn't have any rooms available because it happened to be a football weekend. And I said, you really think they're going to be playing football in this town in October? I just can't see that. Forget about people that maybe aren't going to travel, aren't going to want to stay in a hotel, all those other things you said. I think over there at the university, and I understand what a tough decision this is, they got to tell us what's going to happen. It's interesting to me that Radford, which is a state school, is the only school I've seen in the country who has come out and said, yes, we're opening. This is the day we're opening. Live, with the dining hall, with students on campus, we're opening. Now, might be a little, I'm not sure why they did it so early, but, people are sitting around making these decisions, and a lot of them have been made already. And in our little town, where we are so impacted by the University of Virginia, where they can do, this is not a financial issue for them. What's their 50 or 60 billion or something crazy is their endowment?
Their endowment is $9 billion, 9 with a B.
$9 billion. $9
Yeah.
billion
Yeah.
With a B. $9 billion. So they can figure out whatever they have to do. It's not like Radford, for instance, or University of Mary Washington, where my daughter goes, or places like that, where there are some complicated financial issues associated with this. But I think it's time for President Ryan to stand up and say, okay, folks, we're all part of the same community. Here's what we know so far. Here's what we're going to do. And here's what we're thinking about doing. And we think you ought to know about it. And I know you're a big fan of all the restaurateurs in this town. They really need to know. And the hotel people and things like that. I just think it's too damn quiet over there. And come on, step up to the plate and say,
someone tag Jim Ryan. Someone tag Jim Ryan on this. Someone tag his office in this. I agree.
I think you're a lot younger and a lot better shape than me, Jerry. You probably have to go over there. Doesn't he run at 5:30?
He does.
Yeah, why don't you go over there and run with him?
Yeah, I will say, Big Ray has this question for you, President Ryan. All right, I'm going to close by this. Madeline says, unpopular opinions aren't unimportant opinions. Thank you so much for speaking your mind on this very important topic, Ray Caddell. That's from Madeline. Camelin says, I absolutely like Ray. Grace says, I agree with Ray 100%. We need to know for our business's sake whether or not the university is going to have students on grounds in the fall and whether or not sports are going to happen. Jonas Smith says, bravo, Ray Caddell. You said it correctly. University of Virginia and President Ryan, please let us know what you are doing. Madeline is tagging Jim Ryan as we speak. Barbara Lundgren says, preach, Ray, preach. And Shannon says, oh man, no UVA football games is a huge deal for us at Fry Spring Station. Kate Elwood says, I agree for UVA and public schools. So you're getting a lot of props. You killed it. We'll do it again. Stay safe.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you. You have a good one. Ray Caddell, fantastic. He's got a take. I like it. I respect it. Valuable information on today's program. John Updike says words of wisdom. So here's a couple things we've learned. And hugely positive comments left on the show from a number of people, particularly from Kate Elwood, particularly from Shannon Ransom, particularly from Courtney Hillenbrand, Jacqueline Greiger jumping in the mix. So you have a number of caterers jumping in the mix. This is one of the most important ones that I think needs to be highlighted and run up the flagpole. I'm very curious if the weddings, if there's a lobbying organization for weddings or if there's a lobbying organization for, there's got to be one for wineries. I know there's one for wineries. Is there one for breweries? I know there's one for breweries. This is, if I was atop the totem pole of the Winery and Vineyard Lobbying Association or Commonwealth-wide association, or if I was atop the totem pole, the Virginia Brewery Association or the Virginia craft brewery group, or the wedding, if there's in a co-op or a wedding association, and if these three organizations or platforms or groups have the ear of the governor through lobbyists, which a lot of them do, I would say this particular topic from Courtney Wilson Hillebrand, I would say, think about this, guys, and she's comparing Virginia to Texas. If you look at Texas, they are giving less restrictions on open-air venues versus enclosed venues, but everything is based on capacity, not an actual threshold or limitation of 50 people. So if you're a 100-person capacity, your opening is based on your total number of people and your outdoor square footage. Obviously, the bigger spaces. So think about this. Think about this. Who's a good example? Devil's Backbone. You know how many structures Devil's Backbone has out there and how much outdoor space Devil's Backbone has? Devil's Backbone is in a much stronger position from a brewery standpoint to host an outdoor event or a wedding than, say, something like Rockfish. That might not be a good comparison because Rockfish is next to a home gardening store. I love Rockfish's beer. But you get what I'm saying. How about, he said Castle Hill. Ray Caddell said Castle Hill. Castle Hill has huge land around it and a huge freaking barn. They have huge edges. It's just like this gym. Aren't you intrigued by this? The little guy, a battle of David and Goliath. I oftentimes root for David over Goliath. How about this right here? The gym on Pantops has an edge over a gym like ACAC and Phil Wendell. NBC 29 reports today about a gym on Pantops, Iron Will Gym, put the headline back up again, Judah, opening up next week. Its business model is 15 people or less, and we can make money, open our doors, and survive. So when the governor's office says next week you can open your businesses for 10 people or less, a gym that has a max capacity of 15 is in a much better position to survive than Phil Wendell's ACAC. If Phil Wendell and ACAC said, if Chris at ACAC, Collins at ACAC, or Phil Wendell said, we're going to let 10 of you in on these doors, and everybody else has to wait outside until one person leaves ACAC, and the other person then can come in. Do you know how long the line would be? The line would be around the corner at the downtown ACAC, around Garrett Square, and up into where the food market, up into where the Saturday Farmers Market would be. It would never work. It would never work. But this small gym, it's working for Eve in Belmont. Eve in Belmont, she's got a phenomenal gym that's a boutique gym that she can work. The David has the edge over the Goliath because of the smaller, more nimble model. And we'll close on this note. What do you want your business to look like next week when it opens? Wrap your mind around it. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. And I hope to God, whether it's a retail store, a service industry business, a barber, a restaurant, a brewery, a tap room, whatever it is, whatever opens next week, I hope you will not respond in anger to that particular business opening because you don't understand the circumstances for that respective family or entrepreneur or what they're going through or the circumstances they have with their landlord, their burn rate, their cash in their bank, what their employees are going through, whatever it may be. I hope you don't respond negatively in anger to the ones that open next week because they're coming and it's happening. What do you want it to look like? I'd like to see, when I go into a restaurant, the waitstaff have masks on. I'd like to see a little room for the Holy Spirit between the tables. And yes, that means sacrificing some seating capacity. Not all of it, some. I'd like to see all guests in a dining room wearing masks until the food arrives and the food is plated. I'd like to see an effort made to cleanliness from the front of the house staff in the dining room because perception is reality a lot of ways. And I'd like to see a protocol given to the customer when they sit down at the table that this restaurant is doing this to maintain this safety, along with your ability to order oysters or lasagna or linguine or craft burgers or fries or steaks. We're doing this. Here's a sheet of paper and we're doing this. That's what I'd like to see, and I think we can do that. I want to close on the Jim Ryan comment from Ray Caddell. Ray and I talked off the phone, off air briefly, in setting up this interview yesterday. And I can't agree with him more. In fact, I think he's 100% right. It's important for the University of Virginia to make the announcement now and say this is what we're going to do with the fall with our 20 to 25,000 people that are oftentimes the lifeblood of this community in a lot of ways. Because if we know that Scott Stadium and the University of Virginia football season is canceled, or if the University of Virginia football team is playing in front of an empty stadium, let's say it's playing in front of an empty Scott Stadium, or the season is canceled, that's going to open up, is it 6 or 7 home games in the fall? That's going to open up a heck of a lot of hotel rooms. The last thing you want to do, Jim Ryan, is wait to the last minute to make this announcement because it's going to create a horrible domino effect from hotels to restaurants to retail and to everybody that have their businesses associated with the University of Virginia machine. So like anything, we can take the tough news, but just deliver it to us so we can prepare for it. I'll close on that note. I'm Jerry Miller. It's the I Love CVille Show. Hey, thank you.